Within the garden of life, many flowers exist that serve their own unique purpose. Some have greater values than others, and many stand out for their own uniqueness. But these two roses were born together and shared different fates. As now we can see how each one of their stories will connect. What if Yoichi Isagi and Michael Kaiser were brothers?
Get that paper, told that Glock, that's how we live. Yeah, my life's a game, I pray I don't get killed. They can't believe I got the guap, this shit for real. Can't accept the fact my brother gone, I wanna kill. Yeah, I can't go for that shit don't sit right. Instead of cabin to the old nigga, I know what you live like. Ain't worried about all just fuck these hoes and live life. I grown the drill, I'm smart enough, you gotta know how to kill.
With our story here, we actually start in a new setting, as we were far away from Japan, within Germany. As we have two greatly known figures, a woman, as beautiful as ever, is seen taking a stage for an award-winning performance in a movie that she starred within. As soon a man also takes the stage, as he was the director for the very same film. With that, the applause is heard louder than ever, and from this moment, shared in the spotlight, a spark was created. And from this spark, a boy named Michael Kaiser would be born. But due to his mother, he and his father were casted aside. No one could see them together or know that they have a kid together. That was her declaration. From this point on, Kaiser's story remained relatively the same up until a couple years had passed. By now, Kaiser was still only a toddler, and one day on TV, his drunk father saw something that infuriated him more than anything. Kaiser's mother revealed that she was now pregnant, for the first time to the world, but for a second time for them, from another movie star who was from Japan. Months later, a baby Isagi is born, and he's thrusted into the industry and the spotlight. Each time that he arises on TV, it makes Kaiser's father hit on him more, with Kaiser realizing this is the reason why he's hated. It's his half-brother Isagi's fault that he can't have a happy life with his mother and father. Not only does Kaiser's father torment him, but he also shapes his mind so that he sees Isagi. Well, Isagi as a villain. However, not all is well, because shortly after Isagi's birth, in his early days as a kid, his father falls into a coma from an onset injury. With this, his mother begins working tirelessly in order to fund the hospital to keep him alive. Each day that goes by, Isagi would sit with his father, hoping to see him wake up or just to hear his voice once again. Nothing. Nothing at all, as it's only silence that fills the room where they sat in. But one day, his mother had looked out the window at the setting sun and began to rant. She often would do this as a way to pass time, or she felt sad herself to cheer herself up. Isagi, have I ever told you about what your father did before he became one of the most famous actors from Japan? Isagi, puzzled, listened in. His mother then continues, telling her son that he was a mediocre football player who actually got to play for Japan. He always told her of his talents, but they were second class to another player who he looked up to, who was in Japan, as this other player even rivaled Noel Noah, the world's current #1. But still, he loved the sport and wished to one day bring his country a World Cup. That would be more important to him than starring in any other movie. Isagi looks at his father and thinks about him playing football, not believing it at all. His mother laughed. Don't worry, I didn't believe it either the first time he told me, but he truly did love football. As the sun shined, one final time before the sky turned into night, Isagi stood up, claiming that before his father wakes up, he's going to win a World Cup for Japan. This is what he plans to give him as a present when he awakens. With both our protagonists being so young, we follow their lives, as Kaiser of course has a dark road, while Isagi has a more of an easy path. However, make no joke, as Isagi struggled on his early years of playing football, with his mother seeing how seriously he took the sport. She supported him 100%, with trainers and coaches, leading to Isagi developing very early, but he still believed that it wasn't enough. Using Noel Noah as a goal for success, he was far from it. Each day he pushed himself to exhaustion, making a name for himself within Germany. However, he eventually moved to Japan with his own attendance, believing his father would have wanted his success to continue here. Since we do know what happens to Kaiser with his mistreatment and interest in football, let's continue with Isagi first. As a young Isagi embarked on his journey to Japan, the goal of working towards a World Cup was set in his mind. He was filled with determination and a burning passion for the sport that the stories of his father instilled within him. Despite his young age, he possessed a natural talent that had even been nurtured while he had played in Germany, which promised a great potential future for the boy. Moving to Japan was the ultimate decision for him, as he would be away from his mother, but with his attendance here and his mother constantly calling to check up on him, he would be alright. And from the moment Isagi arrived in Japan, he immersed himself in an intense training regimen that pushed his physical and mental limits. Waking up before dawn, he would hit the training field to work on his technique, speed, and agility, constantly striving to fine-tune his abilities and improve. His dedication and his work ethic quickly caught the attention of his coaches and teammates once he had joined a local club team. But they were impressed by his relentless pursuit of excellence, as some of his teammates who were his age will question what drives him so much, and Isagi would reach his hands up to the setting sun that was blazing down on him. As he would say, Noel Noah is who he's chasing after, and they would know that he is from, or he was born in Germany. So it makes sense to them, but the reason he was chasing him was so different than that. As Noel Noah, every time Isagi watched him on the TV, he seemed to get better and better, which made him the perfect person to chase after. As Isagi felt like he was getting closer to him step by step and every day, Noel Noah was constantly pushing himself away, climbing higher and higher, letting Isagi know that there were truly levels to skill in the world-class arenas. His mother visited and checked on him all the time. Isagi was still the son that she wished to have, especially because he looked so much like his father. Seeing that fire in his son's eyes made her support his dreams even more. Enrolling him in another private academy, she believed this is where his journey would continue. And with that, Isagi had to try out and of course made his school's club team. His talent and drive is what made him a standout player on his club teams. His skillful dribbling, precise passing, and lethal finishing ability set him apart from many of his competitors, earning him a reputation in Japan as a rising star in Japanese football. In every match, Isagi gave it his all, leaving everything on the field as he battled against older and more experienced opponents, even being given a starting position early on with the team. His scoring ability was truly incredible, and his vision was something else. Even though their club was really good all around, they still had their own obstacles to face. Tough matches against other club teams tested their resilience and his own, pushing Isagi to dig deep and find the strength to overcome the challenges and setbacks that he would constantly face, whether facing defenders, tactical opponents, or pressurized attack situations. Isagi never backed down, rising to the occasion and showcasing his skills with grace and composure time and time again. As Isagi's reputation grew, so did the expectations placed upon him, as fans began to take notice of the young prodigy who seemed to be destined for greatness. This might be what Japan needed, as many higher-ups in the Football Association for Japan would also note that Isagi and another young prodigy, well, it seemed they were opening the gateway for many others to follow soon, but that wouldn't be for some time. With each impressive performance, Isagi cemented his status as a known name in Japan for his exceptional talent and unwavering commitment to his success. Heading back to Germany, we have to see that Michael Kaiser is finding football for himself more and more interesting every day. And here, with Isagi already making headlines and Japanese football being on the news time and time again, Kaiser's father was keeping up, changing his minds about some things. Kaiser's drunk father made a master plan to crush that pathetic Japanese offspring that ruined his life using his own worthless son. Kaiser began his own football career a little earlier than usual, and he was a sensation. Nothing was stopping him as he set all his rage out on the field, gaining his famous Kaiser impact very early on. Seeing how incredible his son actually was, this caused a change in their outlook on each other. For each great game that Kaiser had, his father stopped beating on him. Still, he was looked at as nothing more than a tool. With each having their own great journey, they have some very specific events that would shape their future. Kaiser is framed for a robbery, and this makes his father lash out in a way that he never has before, slamming a vase upon his head, causing it to bleed. The police hold him back and tell him to stop. This is when he goes to crush the football, and Kaiser slams his foot into his head, knocking him out. Michael Kaiser is then imprisoned in Germany. Meanwhile, Isagi is losing in a very important match for a school championship. Their teamwork isn't working, and they need a new plan, as it seems their coaches run out of all options, looking to the players for inspiration. Isagi was in the locker room and begins hyperventilating, not knowing what he could do at all. If he doesn't figure out something here, soon, he'll fall even further behind his goal. Losing here won't ever help his father wake up either. I can't lose. Not at all. Not yet. To lose here is to forsake everything else that I've stood for thus far. He wouldn't accept this, so why should I? Isagi enters the game once again, looking forward at his opponents, now seeing something differently. Those eyes of his are very different than before. Isagi can almost see the path to goal, and using these new eyes, he scored over and over again, ripping through his opponents with his new goal gaze. Isagi showed how deadly he could be, throwing away his teamwork and his ideals, playing on his own with his new version of football. This is what made him truly different. With these eyes, he continued to dominate those within his age group and his club, later using these eyes to take him to another championship for his school the next year. And by the time of his last year, Kaiser was already playing for Bayern Munich, and he was playing at a high level. Still, Isagi had no idea of his half-brother, or even his existence. In fact, more pressing matters had approached him, as Itoshi Sai would meet with him, telling him to become even more excellent so that the two could one day win a World Cup together. Isagi shockingly refused his offer. I've never had to rely on others to create my own goals. And to win a World Cup, I won't look for the outlook on your passes. I'll score regardless of the situation, as that's the striker I intend to become. Walking away with this statement allowed Sai to get a good look at the player that Isagi truly was. In fact, he was almost named a new Gen 11 player, but had declined it. That title didn't intrigue him at all. He only cared about one thing, and that was improving his own style of play. Seeing as that was his goal, when Blue Lock had arrived as a challenge to him, he entered with no hesitation at all. Isagi is seen entering Blue Lock as he's forced to put his phone away within a box. This agitates him because he's used to that constant connection and talking to his mother on a daily basis. However, Henry does give him hope, saying that it could be earned back by doing well within the facility. Nodding and taking his clothes, he enters more confident than ever. Walking into a room to see his team, he's actually shocked that each of them stands out so differently. Team Z here is the same, and Ego appears once again on the screen, introducing the game of tag to the players. Isagi would ask the question once again that if he performs best on this team, will he be awarded his phone? And actually, wanting to provoke the striker, Ego agreed, disappearing. So when the game of tag does begin, you might be shocked to hear that Isagi steals the ball from Igarashi and runs around, using it to tag each person in the room before sending it into the side of Igarashi with 2 seconds left on the timer. A buzzing sound would go off shortly after, as Ego reappears, eliminating the young player. He would smile upon the screen, saying that the son of 2 actors is quite interesting after all. Well, I guess one of the boy's parents is a true actor, he says to himself. Henry would question this, but Ego waves her off and then begins the training of each young prodigy and their teams. Throughout each part of the training sessions, Isagi here excels, finding none of it difficult at all. In fact, he far outclasses his peers with little effort, with most of Team Z wondering just who he was. Still, Isagi was dedicated and even took his training to the early mornings and late nights. The obsession is what led Ego to having even more interest within him. Days continued to pass, where we'd see Isagi slowly becoming more and more complete. There was a certain private practices where he'd use his goal gaze to learn more about it, learning its requirements, and that he must be in a certain range of the goal for the path to be created. With this new adaptation and understanding, Isagi becomes increasingly closer to his own breakthrough technique. He just needs one final catalyst, and hopefully that will come soon, as the next day, Jinpachi Ego announces the first selection and its rules. The team now has to determine their starting lineup as well as their starting striker, and here, it's Kira. Not too many have a problem with this since he did win the rock paper scissors, except for Isagi. However, he does comply, only to make it better for his own team. They have some practices before their first match, as this is when we see our first look at another team, Team X and their main striker Baru. The game kicks off, with many fighting over possession for the ball, but the king, rampaging and ripping through all of them, makes his declaration that anything against him is futile and they're all just peasants. With that though, Isagi makes his own decisions, deciding to show off some of his actual talent when the game resets after Baru had scored his own goal. He sprints right by Kira as many were approaching him, as he then looks back. Come on, I've seen you do it before. Deliver the pass for my evolution. Kira, looking ahead, sees Baru barreling towards him and decides now is a better time than anything, as this was the best option, chipping it over the king's head as it now lands near Isagi. Still, defenders were here. Before the ball can actually land on the ground or on his foot if he were to trap it, Isagi's goal gaze manifests itself. This was different than before. Recalling his junior high years, Isagi's goal gaze was a solo ability, relying on his own strength and skill to create a path to the goal within his mind. But it seems that here, that a pass from this player who he doesn't have any connection to at all, can greatly affect his visionary abilities. Seeing the defenders closing in, Isagi not only traps the ball, but spins through them, moving ahead. Not seeing any type of move like this before, many of the defenders were caught off guard. Being wide open now, he takes a shot, tying up the game. Baru was the one who was annoyed the most, but it seemed that the puzzle pieces were swarming around our protagonist. Using others to awaken hidden parts of himself he didn't know that existed. He never thought of playing football in such a sadistic nature until receiving that pass. But he loves the thought of gaining strength through any means necessary. Isagi now goes back and forth with the king, leading to a tie game in the end due to Gagamaru still being a new keeper and a lot of Team Z not having the capabilities to keep up with Baru. However, Isagi was gaining even more knowledge as the match had went on. Now, with a tie under their belt, the team talks about their strategy for the upcoming match against their next opponents, Team Y. Each person reveals the strength that they have on the field, except for Isagi. Due to him scoring 4 goals, he asked for his phone back. And since he has it here, he was actually texting his mother during this team meeting. She states that after he leaves Blue Lock, she does have something crucial to tell him. Isagi wonders if it's about his father's recovery, so he doesn't ask for any type of hint. Instead, he tells her that he's going to go work out. This is when we see his mother put down her phone, and she looks at the TV, seeing Michael Kaiser scoring a winning goal for Basher Munchen. Back to the facility, we'd see Team Z and Y on the field, with Isagi now as the starting striker. No one could deny his skill, not even Kira, who was focusing on scoring himself, believing that he could rival Isagi if he trained hard enough. The match then begins, and Team Y passes the ball around, not doing much of anything with it, which confuses Team Z, as they wasted a lot of their energy chasing around, but they couldn't keep up with the ball. This led to their quick attack, but it's stopped by Kira and Kunigami, both players nodding to one another, starting the counter for Team Z. Players dash around the field into the open space, but at the same time, defenders move quickly. Kira goes for that same pass to Isagi, and he jumps to trap it in the same manner as before. However, this time is much different. Iki Nico appears from behind Isagi, intending to stop him using his own vision and defensive abilities. Not this time, Isagi. We've prepared for this, as we see Iki Nico's own vision. Isagi can see the other 2 defenders at the ready, so even if he was to spin, he's still trapped. He then looks at the pass, not panicking at all. So what? It seems I'm still in range. Isagi's eyes would glow with a passion like no other, as his goal gaze, well, ignited as he performed a bicycle kick into the goal. Iki Nico falls to the ground in disbelief, saying a shot like that shouldn't be possible, especially from this range. However, Isagi turns to him, looking down at him. No shot or technique can escape my grasp. From this point on, Team Z knows what to expect, with Team Y trying to stall the game. So, it's another dominating match for them. And when training for their next opponents, Isagi walks into the room, grabbing Kunigami, stating that his eyes showed him something completely different. But he has to test out this theory of his. Because of his training that's hidden from the rest of his team, Isagi, well, he requested a formation change for their next match, now running himself and Kunigami as the strikers up top. Not many were actually bothered by this, but their opponents on Team W found this strange, especially the twins, whose whole plan was to crush Isagi using a 2-on-1 defensive combo. But now with Kunigami here, it seems that their plans were cancelled. From the opening play, the twins were shut down by the 2 strikers who were pressing forward. With that beginning steal, they then look on, sliding into their offensive strategy. And they do so with a goal. Isagi moves into the box, and the ball is heading his way, with both Wanama twins blocking him and intending to get the steal here. Isagi himself, well, he wasn't concerned, but he knows he needs to find a new way to score. Using his free arm, he pushes off one of the twins and makes it into space, recovering the pass easily from Kunigami. Just a little bit more. The remaining defender cuts off his shot, but this was something new that was about to happen. A left-footed shot came from Isagi's foot, and it soars into the net, showing that he was dangerous, whether he was on his weak foot or his strong foot. A new left-footed shot is what takes the breath of those watching, except for Kunigami, as now it seemed that the twins were in for some trouble. Not only could Isagi use his left foot, at the same time, Kunigami was even more efficient with his right, a duo that had either option at their disposal, made for something truly scary. Completely obliterating the twins and the rest of their team in this match, it seemed that this new Team Z was becoming unstoppable. Isagi himself was at the forefront of all of it, but was still chasing after more, knowing that this isn't what he saw. His goal gaze was still leading him to something more, a shot that was his own. Working out after an intense game, thinking of everything that could be done differently, he still doesn't have an answer. There was something that was still truly missing from his game. With their final match of this selection announced against Team V and their prodigies, Isagi, well, his own brother, back in Germany, was set to face a formidable rival team. Now, it seems that Kaiser had his own troubles to face, as well as Isagi, but both wanted to make a declaration in their own way. Jumping back into our story, it seemed that Isagi was studying his opponents to create something new. Later, he does realize something that could be game-changing for his style of play. It complements him so perfectly, so how could he gloss over it? So then he goes to practice it, hoping to unleash this new weapon within this final match of the first selection. Night turns into day as the strikers group on the pitch for a match that might determine which team was the best in this selection. Ryo is the one to claim that Isagi is quite the striker, but Nagi is a complete prodigy. Isagi wouldn't waste his time speaking, instead focusing on his goal gaze. Somehow, he could always create a path from his opponent's movements or their passes. But this new technique, it had so much range, which excited him as he could see the goal from here. He then passes the ball off to Kira once the whistle blows and runs ahead, making his move into position. At the same time, in Germany, Michael Kaiser dashes across the field, with Alexis Ness running in the background. This was his own shining moment, where he planned to declare himself to the world. Kaiser and Isagi met the ball at the same time respectively. The Kaiser impact blasted across the field with such a loud boom it could be heard before it skids across the back of the net. Meanwhile, the arcane sniper shot whips across the sky, curving into the net with ferocity as the keeper couldn't even predict its pattern. Each brother has their own respective reaction to their own shots, as Kaiser was content with his goal and his hard work, clenching his fist. However, Isagi's own greed had shown through his expression as he wanted to develop more, as this was the first time that Isagi had entered an awakened state with his blackout eyes. Ryo and Zantetsu both look on, not knowing what to think at all. However, Kira was the one to declare that the shot that they just witnessed can't be stopped by any normal means at all. With the distance that Isagi had used, that technique, he may become unstoppable. Both techniques score incredible goals, and now their opponents must retaliate. However, there was nothing they could do, as each respective striker had entered their own state of flow, destroying whatever was in their path, displaying their true natures. Going back to Isagi's POV, we see that Nagi during this match also had his own awakening, beginning to try harder against Isagi. But that was only because he was so interesting, and even that proved to be useless. Isagi as of now was just in a tier of his own, and it was shown by the hat trick he scored in this match. But don't think that he was alone, as Kunigami scored 2 goals himself, being assisted by Kira and Bachira. Team Z here had a much better record than before, and now must prepare to move on to the next selection. The training that they undergo had a drastic increase in the intensity, as it seemed that many of Team Z's players fell behind the top 5. Isagi found this training amusing, as he had to try a lot harder with the shooting drills. And while this training does go on for a period of time, we'd go back to Germany, visiting Michael Kaiser. After a few more club wins, there was no denying his skill as a striker at all. But what annoyed him the most was that after a lot of his games, he'd try to find news or anything on Isagi. But since he was inside Blue Lock, there was nothing. Ness was curious why Kaiser was always so fascinated with this young striker. And Kaiser, well, he never told him. Instead, he states that they have a long-term rivalry, as they're also chasing similar goals. Ness nods, but then states that if he can't find anything on him, then Kaiser must be far ahead of him. Kaiser brushes this off and goes to take a shower, but while in the room, slams his fist against the wall. When I find you, Isagi, I'll kill you on the field. So keep hiding if you don't want to have everything stolen from you as I did. Kaiser here zones out as we head back to Isagi, now entering Blue Lock's second phase, with Team Z, realizing there were still so many other strikers left. Isagi was shocked, because what kind of challenges could lay ahead of him? Moving on to the first initial test within this phase, he wasn't even listening to Ego. Instead, he just walked into the room with the holographic keeper appearing. How unique! The ball then immediately shoots from the wall with great speed as Isagi turns, noticing it. Then he slams his foot into it, using his arcane shot to score his first goal within this room. He then sees the timer and the goal amount appear. Just that. I won't be here for long then. Isagi then activates his goal gaze, saying that he'll enjoy this. And for some reason, Ego does pay attention to some of Isagi's goals within this room, noting that he's improving with every shot. By the halfway mark, he had almost perfected his arcane shot, and then went to use the remaining shots to work on his left side. Finally, after exiting the room, he was the first to make it into the new area. So he sits and waits, and lays his head against the wall, closing his eyes, thinking of his mother and father. Soon all the work he was doing here would be worth it. No club team could have leveled him up to such a degree in such a short amount of time. Soon more people arrived, and Hitoshi Ren here teamed up with Isagi as they were the first two, and their final teammate was Tokimitsu, as now they could move on to the next stage. They waited for a little bit of time, and then their first opponents would appear, as it was a team made up of Kira, Nagi, and Bachira. On the pitch, Isagi and Ren don't even pay attention to each other at all. This game is dominated by each of the strikers, who doesn't even leave room for error. Ren with his Trivela shot, and Isagi with his own arcane shot, realize that the two of them are very similar, and they had more in common than they realized with their brothers. But neither would know. This is when Isagi began using Ren to become stronger. Ren was a decoy, and he was forcing himself into situations where he'd have to evolve. Isagi scores 3 goals to Ren's own 2, and their opponents didn't score any at all. But just, why were these two so dominant? Well, it all starts with their shooting range, as once crossing the half-field mark on this smaller pitch, it was basically game over for their opponents. Now, they just needed to get a new addition to the team, and Isagi walks over and points a finger. You should do for now, taking Nagi out of anyone. Nagi himself was shocked, and Isagi states how he's pretty useful, but he doesn't actually think they need him to win. He just finds him amusing, and after seeing how incredible Hitoshi Ren is, Isagi believes that this is truly his only rival here, causing Tokimitsu to ask him a question while they walk through the hallway. Isagi, do you think you're stronger than Ren? Isagi turns back smiling. Definitely. Ren, overhearing this, stopped walking and challenged Isagi, and since they had a lot of time before the next team would arrive, these two completed 1v1s for hours. Each time, Ren was the loser, not understanding how Isagi was so complete as a player. It angered him, so he kept trying, but nothing changed. Ren had an incredible defense, but the pure offense and skills of Isagi was just too much for him. Isagi continued to dominate him until their final exchange, where Ren would awaken, tapping into a pseudo flow state that allows him to get a little bit faster and keep up with Isagi. This is when Isagi finally shows off his goal gaze to him, using unique dribble moves that leave Rin on his back, and he scores another goal against the keeper. Not bad, if you somehow master that manic form of yours. Well, I might be in trouble. But until then, your results won't vary. Isagi walks off and goes to take a shower, cooling off and resting for the night. The next day, they had a challenge in front of them. Kira, Bachira, Baru, and Reo. With this team of 4 challenging Isagi on the pitch, each player has some exchanges with their opponents. The game then begins and Isagi runs forward with the ball, dodging Kira but running into Baru. You again? Don't make me laugh. You won't make a fool out of the king. Bow. Isagi stops and spins and then crosses, leaving Baru confused. Take your own orders, you clown. With now an opening, Isagi appears to wind up his arcane shot, but to his surprise, Rin appears to steal the ball from him. Isagi fakes the shot and then lowers his head. His goal gaze appears, and Isagi now shows off a new power shot. Magnum outbursts, ripping through the air and slamming into the net. The score then changes to 1-0. Isagi lifts up his hair, looking at Rin. Don't tell me that you believed that I didn't evolve alongside you in our little training match. Come on, now show me more so I can become stronger. With the new information in front of him of this shot, Kira knew that they needed to tread lightly if they planned to win this match. Noting that both the arcane shot and this new magnum outburst were both deadly techniques, each one covered the weakness of the other. Just how could they stop Isagi? This is when Kira began to think harder and harder, realizing what they needed to do was just force Isagi to pass the ball, or force the ball away from Isagi. This way he wouldn't be able to score if he didn't have it. Moving on to their own attack attempts, it's stopped by Tokimitsu and Nagi, who would look ahead. Here you go, Isagi. Sending a lob pass ahead, Kira moved in front of Isagi. I got you beat this time. Isagi would smirk, saying that it's still a 4v4, you simpleton. As in the air, Seishiro Nagi had appeared. This one is mine for the taking. As you could see, he was in his own state of awakening, trapping the ball and dribbling up the field to score his own goal, showing that he hasn't been slacking off in his own training as well. Reo was completely dumbfounded, as this wasn't a Nagi he was used to. This was a completely new striker entirely. Isagi and Nagi high-five, with Isagi noting he expected no less from the prodigy. But they aren't done here. Isn't that right, Rin? They look towards Rin to see him slowly entering that destroyer-like state. Isagi smiles and tells his opponents that they don't need teamwork to win. That's not how they plan to play at all. We just need to dominate our opponents with our own abilities. Continuing this match, we see that this would be true, as their opponents would only get one goal, and that's scored by Kira, who's able to just be in the right place at the right time perfectly. With this being the final match, Isagi looks down wondering who they should pick, but Rin walks right by him pointing at Kira. You. Isagi smiles and begins walking back. I would have done the same thing. Moving on to a new room, where they would see Ego appear on the screen, congratulating them. But now, how far could their talents go against the world? A new challenge pops up for them, and now they needed to prepare before facing the World 5 team. Moving into a training room, Isagi looks at the keeper. I'll go beyond my very limits. I want to know what it's truly like within that realm. Not just as a taste as I was given before, but something completely different. Closing his eyes, Isagi dives deeper into his pool of abilities, thinking of that moment where he was able to first use the arcane sniper shot. That feeling of complete domination coursing through every fiber of his existence. His purpose being fully utilized in that moment. What gives a player like himself that kind of spark? That drive to become a new version of himself, above all things. Thinking what truly drives him. Isagi thinks for what feels like hours, but was only a couple minutes truly. Thinking of what really drives him. He can see his mother and his father, and he tries to use them as a catalyst, but nothing happens at all. making Isagi question his own true motives. If that wasn't the reason, then what could it be? This entire time, he thought that he wanted to become a world champion for his father, and that was his purpose for playing the sport. However, his motives may have changed the more he fell in love with playing football for himself. He soon came to the realization that he wanted something else. It was almost comical that it took me so long to figure out why I started to play football in the first place. Winning for my father seemed just to be the half of it. Isagi's memories continue to flood his mind, and he thinks of the fans that his father and mother had while acting, the way people shouted their names, the way people called them out for awards, the way he could always feel the love and emotion from every fan, the fame and the glory that came alongside them with their award-winning performances. He wanted that very same feeling of glory and fame for himself, just within the world of football. To become a national football sensation while winning a World Cup for his country. That's what his true ego desired. Greed. Isagi opened his eyes, taking the ball and dribbling. His aura would morph itself into that of sparks that shine around him and highlight his best features. It's almost as if it was his very own spotlight in his shining moment. Scoring his magnum outburst, Isagi wiped the sweat off his face, looking at the World 5 players on the screen, with only victory on his mind. Isagi now has his own requirements for his pseudo flow state, at least to activate it. He has become the center of attention, a star that shines brighter than any other within the night sky. Days later, the team walks onto the pitch, looking in front of them to see the World 5 players. Each one of them had their own unique technique and presence that threw off the strikers. They asked where Isagi was, as he was the last to walk out, now sporting a new look, one closer to the one in the thumbnail, dyeing his hair due to his feeling of enlightenment in the world of football. While walking out, Julian Loki feels as if he knows him, and walking over to Isagi, he asked in Japanese if he knew of someone named Michael Kaiser. Hearing that name, Isagi had heard the surname before, but just where? Maybe it was one of his mother's colleagues that she had mentioned to him. Still, he waves it off, and Loki has his own investigation to do within the real world. The other strikers noted that Isagi seemed much different from before, as his presence was so calming to be around. Not like the last time, where you could feel his excitement, especially for his love of football. The match begins, and Isagi passes the ball off to Ren before heading up the field himself. Ren dribbles around, but runs into a wall, which forces him to shoot, but it's cut off. This is when the rebound is caught by Kira. Opening his eyes further, he taps the ball over to Isagi, who was in position. Isagi was in the center of the defense, with a player on each side of him. Loki was on his back while it was turned, causing Isagi to smirk. Just a little bit more. Spinning with the ball into a feint to get rid of Loki. And he now has other players who would move in. Isagi remained calm, using everything he knows to play at a higher level. His goal gaze displayed a path like no other. Isagi whips around Silva and now performs his magnum outburst to score the first goal of this match. Smiling while he did so, Isagi tells the players known by the world that he is the next prodigy that will ascend to their realm. The World 5 players soon retaliate with their own attacks. Loki was at the forefront of it, taking on the members of Ego's team with ease, until getting to Isagi. This was one of the first time that he used his goal gaze while on defense, noting that it provided him with something completely different, allowing him to see the path that Loki had available. Incredible. He has this many options from this range, but just what will he choose? This doesn't make any sense. After all, no, I need to focus. If he's here, That means he won't be scared to take me on, head on. Isagi and Loki clash, with Isagi just barely missing Loki, who was using his god speed. But he didn't miss the ball, throwing it off just a little bit. Still, Loki would score. Isagi would lift up his head, knowing that Loki had realized it as well. If Loki stood in the realm of the world-class players, Isagi was quickly climbing towards it within this match. Walking back to his team, Loki would explain that Isagi was quite dangerous, so they need to be careful and solely focus on him going forward. To lose to kids in high schools here will be a disappointment to their nations respectively. In their next exchange, Isagi leaves the ball to Nagi and Kira, who 1-2'd pass up the field. Seeing that Isagi was now open once again, Kira went to pass, but soon realized that all eyes were on Isagi, going for the better option and sending in the ball to Rin. The prodigy traps the ball and shoots his Travella shot, only to have it stopped by Leonardo Luna. The ball is then sent towards Cavazos, but is stolen by Isagi. Running ahead, Isagi begins his own attack, with the World 5 closing in on him once again. In his mind, all the circumstances seem to be met. Awakening in this moment, using the arcane sniper shot as his catalyst, and he stands back up while in the state of flow as the goal is scored, claiming that he doesn't plan to stop here. Beating them is just going to be a stepping stone. Here Isagi scores 3 goals, and Rin would get one of them. However, the World 5 team is able to get the last goal due to luck falling their way, causing Ego to later tell them that even luck can be manipulated within a match. Ego now had to deal with the Japanese Football Association and its members. While he goes through that, within Blue Lock, Isagi was undergoing a new development in which he was gaining a better understanding of the world around him, how players and their personalities affect the game, how each player takes in information differently, truly understanding the different types of egos that were in play, as everyone is the star of the show within their own view. But as he sees it, everyone will look at him as a superstar once he begins to pull Japan into a period of victory. Learning that soon they would be facing Japan's very own U20 team, they began preparing for that challenge. But you know, it's been a while since we covered our other protagonists. Switching back over to Michael Kaiser, we see that he's only gotten even stronger since the last time we had viewed his side of the story, dominating for Germany and putting on quite the show, as by now he's gained his famous nickname, which was quite ironic when you think about it. But still, he had wished to know where his brother was during this time. This is when he actually was visited by someone he knows. When Julian Loki arrives at the facility requesting the appearance of Michael Kaiser himself, Kaiser would want to know the meaning of all of this, until a paper slid across the table. The prodigy, not thinking anything of it, asked Kaiser if he knew who the person in the photo was. Flipping it over, Kaiser's eyes widened. This couldn't be, could it? No, there was no mistaking it at all. This person within the photo, this face, and those piercing eyes could rip everything from him in an instant. That was him, Yoichi Isagi, his younger brother. Kaiser grabbed the photo and balled it up, throwing it into the trash bin that was nearby. You traveled all the way here from France to show me a picture of a nobody. I never expected the great Loki to waste his precious time in such a manner. Loki would then shrug his shoulders while smiling. I guess I've grown bored since there isn't a real challenge for me in the world besides its number 1. Kaiser then scoffs at this, watching Loki walk off. But then, as soon as he's gone, he runs to the trash can, foaming at the mouth, grabbing the photo and running into his room. Noting that this uniform is very unfamiliar with anything that he's ever seen before, Kaiser begins to continue his research, and around 4 a.m., Ness was seen walking into his room, asking what was the meaning of all of this. On the floor and scattered around the room were different newsletters, cutouts, or even magazine photos of Yoichi Isagi's face, with Kaiser just wondering where he was with X markings on all of them. It all leads to one place, with Kaiser seething with rage. So that's where you've hidden yourself, within Blue Lock's own project. Well, go ahead and come out as the ultimate weapon for Japan, so I can crush you alongside that pathetic nation. Ness wondered just how he was able to find him, but he compliments Kaiser for his work and what he's able to do. That's pretty impressive, Kaiser. I knew you could do it. Kaiser ignores Ness, only focusing on his brother. As hours later, Ness claims that he wants to go to sleep, walking off. Later, lying in his room, Ness begins to slam his head against the wall, while repeating Isagi's name, knowing that he was the real reason why Kaiser has never truly acknowledged him. However, if he's able to help Kaiser crush Isagi, then he will gain his attention. As during all of this, Ego was able to put his unpolished gems through many trials, and forms Blue Lock's own 11 that will face the U20 Japan team. With the formation here being structured around Isagi, I'll go over the offense, which is the only thing that truly changes. At the center forward, of course we have Isagi himself, and on his right, we have Nagi, and his left, Rin. As now in the midfield, where Isagi usually would be, we have Kira and Reo on his right, and on his left, we have Hiyori. Everyone else remains the same as far as the defense. There is some time before the actual match, so what happens during that time is a team meeting where Ego begins to go over the flow state itself. Pay attention, you dimwits. I'll teach you now a method of burning your life force that's indispensable for the world's best strikers. While going over this, Isagi thinks of the moments that he's entered the flow state to himself, stating that this isn't a problem for him. What's truly a problem is the exhaustion it puts on his body afterwards. This is something that Ego brings up by using Isagi as an example. Yoichi Isagi is a little different from the rest of you. He's more of a polished gem that's on its way to becoming a precious jewel for the world to reach for. Rin is the one to ask what makes him so special in comparison to the rest of them, and Ego grins from ear to ear, stating that Isagi understands his own requirements for what's needed for his awakening into the flow state. Not believing this, many would question this, and Ego silences them, turning to the screen behind him, and he goes over a play in the World 5 match where Isagi is seen using the flow state. Everything seems to be clicking for him as all his movements become more fluid and his strikes even more precise than they were before. This heightened level of focus was nothing to gawk at all. Ego turns to them, explaining that as of now, this is what their plan focused on. Isagi is truly their trump card, if all else fails. When the meeting is over, many stand up and begin leaving, but Isagi is stopped by Anri and Ego, with the man having something very special in mind for our hero. And we wouldn't get to see it, as later, we'd see Isagi suiting up within the locker room. All I need to do is trust the training that I've done thus far. There's no reason for that hellhole that I was put in to be a waste of time. Thinking back to just how insane Jinpachi Ego was, Isagi smirked. I still can't believe there are people just like him within the world, hidden amongst the stars. Finishing tying his cleats, we see Isagi stand with the number 11 upon his back, stepping through with his team to now stand in a hallway face to face with their new opponents. Some of the U20 players recognize Isagi, especially Sai, who tells them that once they win here, Isagi will join him. Isagi ignores this and leads his team onto the field where thousands of fans begin cheering for what looks like to be an intense match of football. Not knowing how any of this would turn out, Isagi raised his head. His mother would be in attendance, with a section all to herself and her security around her. She prays for her son, knowing that this wouldn't be easy at all. With this match beginning, Blue Lock takes off. Isagi sends it back to Kira, and the striker links up with Ryo in the midfield for a combo of plays. Learning to 1-2 pass around the upcoming defenders, these two worked well together. Gaining open space, it seems that they found an even greater opening. Still though, Ryo had his own goals. Getting the final pass within the midfield, he sends it across to Nagi, who was on the other side. It's been a while since I've gotten one of your passes, Ryo. Nagi jumps and traps it with the defender on his back. I've missed them. Landing now and dribbling by another player to get right into the defense. Nagi here goes for his own shot, but as soon as it headed towards the net, the captain of the U20 team, Oliver Aiku, blocks it with his head, sending it out of bounds. You kids are quite annoying, you know that? Nagi then wipes off some sweat, claiming that the next time, he'll make sure he puts his shot in the back of the net. Aiku smirks, and now they needed someone to take the corner kick. Ryo wanted to take it himself, but Ego leaves that for Yo Hayori, believing he would make the perfect pass to the person without trying to force a play. A goal here would be a major impact on the outcome of the match, as everyone was on edge, being guarded by a defender. Isagi himself just walks out of the box and goes towards Hayori. This draws the defender with him, leaving open space. Instead of passing it right to Isagi, who was closer to him, he crosses it, and while it takes off, Isagi calls it a waste. Itoshi Rin believes it all to be his, but is trapped by no one other than his elder brother, who goes on to lead his team to the first goal of the match at the 25th minute mark. Telling his younger brother that he stands no chance, Rin scoffs, thinking about the last play. While the game continues, Isagi sends the ball even further back as it ends up in the possession of Iki Nico. He's able to see the entire field from back here. Just why me, Isagi? Nico then focuses on the play at hand and plays it to Chigiri. Using his speed, he pushes up the field in order to make something happen. They needed to at least tie the game before it goes into halftime. This is when the ball is sent back to the middle towards Kira. As he goes to trap it, Itoshi Sai intercepts the ball. Landing with it, both he and Kira would watch him, as he also has Ryo, who was in front of him as well. We have to stop him here, Kira. Don't you think I know that already? Just don't let him get by. This is when Itoshi Sai displays his true level of skill, making the two defenders look like a cakewalk. But as he goes to make a play, his brother was right there on his side. I won't let you. Is that so? Come on then, Rin. I'll crush you and your dreams right here. The brothers battle it out, where the latter comes out on top as usual. However, making it by the ball, it's poked out by Iki Nico. It then bounces over to Bachira, who hasn't gotten many touches throughout this match, so he runs off with it while smiling. Dribbling through the field of defenders and making a final pass to Isagi before the half would end. Aiku was guarding the shot path, but Isagi used the arcane sniper shot to score a goal that couldn't be blocked. Using the knowledge of the last header, he was able to work around Aiku and able to get this dagger of the goal. The crowd would roar in excitement, and his mother screams his name. Only a fist was raised in the air to celebrate this goal. Isagi claims that he won't lose just yet. There's still so much of the world that hasn't been explored by him. His team then surrounds him, but there were still 10 minutes left before the half mark would go off. So, if they could gain one more goal, that's what they should do. Itoshi Sai gets the ball from Sendo and then runs ahead, but he doesn't even make it to the half-field mark because of Isagi marking him. He confronts him early, so the game won't end here. He tries to dribble around Isagi, but Isagi wouldn't move at all. Itoshi Sai combos skills together, but nothing from his opponent. He wonders what he was planning. Is he trying to predict a pattern, or is he just waiting? Isagi sits there, staying still, but with him, also using his body to block off his opponent's vision. With these two continuing to battle it all out, all eyes were on them, causing Sai to sort of awaken, but it was too late. Bursting with speed, Isagi steals the ball and now has a chance for the counter. 5 minutes remain, and Isagi was running with the ball, with Sai chasing behind him. Passing to Kira on his right, Isagi gets around another defender and then is cornered by Aiku. He gets the pass back and now just needs a little bit more. An awakening here would be good, but that's something he doesn't have to rely on at all. Aiku holds up his leg, blocking Isagi's shot. However, this was a fake. Still, Itoshi Sai was stopping him from using his arcane sniper shot and his magnum outburst. So what would he do? This is when the training of Jinpachi Ego comes to mind, volleying the ball with his left foot to use a lefty magnum outburst. So he basically performed his own two-gun volley here to take the lead before the half. Not even celebrating this goal, Isagi simply clutches his fist while smiling. Jinpachi Ego was seen laying back in his chair while calling the kid insane, but that's what the world of Striker needs currently, especially Japan. Someone who defies what others believe as impossible. While Isagi's mother sat in the stands, thinking about how incredible her son has become, someone tries to approach her, but he's stopped by their security. She thinks it's a fan, but it's someone that she never expected to see here of all places. Taking off his hood and smiling with those same piercing eyes. "Hello, mother." Going into the locker room, Isagi placed a towel on his head and looked at his hand. Seems that headless training is really paying off, but I need just a little bit more in order to win here. Walking back out, they would see that the U20 team has made a change, throwing Shido into the mix alongside Itoshi Sai, as now Blue Lock's 11 was faced with an even more difficult challenge. The U20 team starts with the ball and goes on the attack. Within the midfield, Itoshi Sai is confronted by no one other than Isagi, but Rin as well. Both of them defended him close, and since Isagi was the backburner of this exchange, he was rapidly learning from Sai, eventually breaking through the brothers' defense, and then he'd go for a pass to Shido. Isagi jumped in the way, while Nico and Kira both guarded Shido. And since their vision was so similar, they were easily able to predict the play at hand, intercepting the ball, and now giving it to Chigiri, as the strikers began to counter, focusing all their attention on getting the ball back to Isagi since he was heating up. But even he could tell everyone had their eyes on him, especially the brothers, so he needed something else as well. Making it back to the goal box, Isagi noted that the conditions are just right. Seeing the ball now headed his way from across, he jumps up to meet it. Defenders would jump with him, but he's able to see this as well. Knowing he has no other option, he turns his body mid-air to perform a scissor kick that would go into the goal. With no one even believing this to be true, Isagi landed upon the ground within a state of flow himself. From here on out, he continues to dominate the match with his scoring. But instead, we'd go to Kaiser, who calls his younger brother impressive. His mother had been silent during this whole exchange, but utters the words, "I'm sorry." Kaiser turns to her shocked, not believing his mother had any source of remorse within her body at all, or that she even cared for him. However, that still didn't take back all the pain that he went through, all the abuse, all the mental struggles, everything. So he puts his head down, and then stands back up. "Tell my brother to get ready, because when we meet on the field, I plan to crush him with all my might." She tries to stop him from leaving, but Kaiser ignores her, as she did to him all those years ago. The U20 match then ends in the overwhelming victory for the Strikers from Blue Lock, but now they just need to wait and see what would truly happen next. While Ego begins to work on creating the next phase, Isagi returns to his mother in Germany. Stepping back into his home to be welcomed by his mother, she ends up taking him somewhere. Isagi wonders where their personal driver was taking them so late, ending up at a field. No, this was the field where Isagi first practiced on his team as he was a child. He tells his mother that this is pretty silly and they need to go back home. He does appreciate her for never letting him forget his roots, but it is getting pretty late. She then tells him that he needs to look around a little bit more. Isagi was confused, and then he looks up. Wait, no, this was strange. Wait, did she really? That couldn't be, he would think to himself. She looks at Isagi, and Isagi would look to her, as she points with tears in her eyes, and Isagi looks at someone standing on the field, looking towards the setting sun. Running out of the car, he couldn't believe his eyes. Was this some sort of dream? Was his mind playing tricks on him? No, this was real. As he continued to run, the man slowly turned around, and his body, well, it had become a little bit weaker. But even he cries at seeing how big his son has gotten. Isagi falls to the ground before reaching him, calling his father to catch him. Still as clumsy as ever, aren't you, Isagi? Father, please tell me that none of this is a dream. You're really here, aren't you? The man nods, telling his son that he woke up around 2 weeks ago, and he couldn't believe that Isagi had become such a star in the world of football. As they go back to their home, his father begins to recover, while learning of Isagi's life. This is when Isagi would finally check his phone to see that he's gotten offers from all sorts of clubs around the world. His father looked to him, asking what he wants to do personally, and Isagi states that he does want to return back to Blue Lock, but he hasn't got any word from Jinpachi Ego. Wondering just what was going on, he'd wait a couple more days. This is when his mother tells him that they need money going forward, and Isagi, understanding that his father's bills weren't cheap at all, he knows what he needs to do. Calling the manager of a team that has already offered him a big contract, he begins talking to them. News then begins to spread around the world, as weeks later, we see Isagi at a press conference, holding up a Real jersey and signing a contract to the team that had Leonardo Luna and Itoshi Sai. Being welcomed to the team by Luna, who was the captain, he confirms that Isagi may have sparked a movement, as many of the other strikers who were on the Blue Lock 11 team would also join different teams around the world. But Isagi found that amusing, saying that they wouldn't outdo him, and he was already the top striker before leaving. Isagi still doesn't care for any of that, as he already wants to get started. However, they had several months before the Spanish League began once again. Although, since the summer had approached, they do have other matches that would occur, while they have the young players and non-starters play against other teams within the Spanish League. Their practice matches were brutal, and relied on so much creativity and pure skill in order to conquer what was right in front of you. Being able to predict your opponents and read them to act accordingly is what made this team number one within the Spanish League. Isagi quickly adapts to all of this, getting familiar with his teammates and his coaches. Luna is actually very welcoming to the team, to Isagi, due to Itoshi Sai putting in a good word for him. These two young prodigies will be very useful to himself and the club. Sai actually wouldn't play in the first preseason game, but Isagi starts as their striker against another Spanish team. Focusing on what the coach was telling him within the game, Isagi began to focus on his task at hand. This was his debut match, so he needed to make an impact here early. Luckily for him, none of his teammates had it out for him, so this wouldn't be a lot of hard work for him at all. With the match taking off, Isagi shows why he was clearly meant to be here. Within Spain, he was crafty and cunning, making opportunities for himself every chance that he could, which gained him an early hat trick within this match. Seeing just how incredible this lineup played around the young striker, the coaches wanted to test a few things out. With many of their preseason games, they tried out many different lineups in order to find the easiest route to success. Isagi would make this easy for him though, as he had so much control over the field and his shooting techniques. He was a one-of-a-kind striker, but don't think that only Real benefited from his presence. He gained a lot of learning under so many elite players. His dribbling techniques, as well as his thought process, greatly increased, which in turn led to his goal gaze becoming even more incredible. With the season truly beginning, the triple threat of Luna, Sai, and Isagi was nothing to take lightly. Going undefeated for the first half of the season, their only problem was when facing a rival club. The match wouldn't end in their loss, but a tie. But this was due to the game plan that they had installed for Isagi, so that he wouldn't be able to get the ball, slowing down his scoring, but not completely stopping him. Isagi takes this and begins to change his training drastically, focusing more on building each muscle to its peak so that he could create a new style. One very akin to his flow state, one that would rip the attention of anyone, causing a rising star to be seen upon every kick of the ball. Real has an amazing season and was now prepared for the Spanish League tournament. Nothing really happens until we eventually get to the finale, where Real once again faces their rivals, this time defeating them thanks to the synchronization of Itoshi Sai and Yoichi Isagi. With the trophy under their belt, their names begin to stretch across the seas and lands, eventually reaching the whole world. And it goes as far as to reach Jinpachi Ego and Japan, who was also crafting a team for the upcoming World Cup. There was actually another 6 months before the preliminary matches would even begin, so he had time to prepare and gather other players. First, he had to go to Spain in order to get Yoichi Isagi and Itoshi Sai. Ego hopes that the rest of the players are as easy to find as them. After a month, the team is assembled and began playing in their preliminary matches once they would arrive. It wasn't really hard for them to gain chemistry. Instead, it was actually pretty hard to pick a starting lineup that would revolve around Isagi. Eventually finding it, the team begins to tear through the world's competition on the way to a World Cup. And they have no trouble storming through the competition, with the finale, of course, coming down to a match between Germany's finest, that being Michael Kaiser. And let's head back a little bit to follow the story of Kaiser and his own journey. After leaving Japan, he had returned due to Noel Noah and Blue Lock combining, and with that, he entered in order to find his younger brother and crush him. However, he learns that Isagi wasn't there. Instead, he was in Spain. But he didn't mind this at all. Growing here and becoming stronger under the number 1 in the world benefited Kaiser, so he had a rapid development due to the main focus of each match going to him and Kunigami. And with that, he was defended by teams like the Uber. He would have to evolve to a new level. Kaiser dominated the NEL with a slight struggle, as the only person who really posed a threat to him was Itoshi Rin in France. It was actually quite poetic. While their brothers worked together, they fought on the field to overtake one another, leading to Kaiser and Bastard Munchen to go undefeated within the NEL, and he returns to Germany. This is where he begins to hear about Isagi's crusade over Spain, as later he joins the under-20 Germany squad in hopes of winning a World Cup and hopefully crushing his brothers in the finale of it. But this also leads to him defeating Julian Loki and an underdeveloped Charles within the semifinals. Now, he finally faced his brother face to face on the most grand stage. Kaiser walks up to him. So, we finally meet. And you are? Itoshi Sai steps in. Michael Kaiser, another new Gen 11 player who's a striker. Isagi nods. Oh, okay. Nice to meet you, I guess. But I don't plan on losing here. Neither do I. But I'm more than just a new Gen 11 player. I'm something you might fear. Isagi looked confused, but Kaiser stated that he was his elder brother. Isagi's eyes would shock Kaiser as they lit up instead of being enraged. Isagi had always wanted someone to compete with, but he never knew of his brother's existence. Kaiser slaps his hand away, claiming that he will crush Isagi. He's been waiting this moment for his whole life. Isagi then looks at him with a confused expression. Wait, you knew about me? Why have you never contacted me? Kaiser scoffs. You should ask that question to our mother. He walks away, and the match soon begins. Isagi thinks nothing of it actually, as this would fire him up even more. Controlling a pass from Mikage Reo, he turns to see who was in his way. Kaiser and Ness were both running at him, and Isagi dropped the ball back off to Itoshi Sai, who headed up the field on his side. But Kaiser didn't lose sight of him, thanks to his metavision. Although the path that he was taking was strange, he was getting by defenders with ease. Just how was he able to see this path, Kaiser would think to himself. He continued to track him down, but then arrived a step too late, breaking through defenders to receive a good lob pass from Sai. Isagi trapped it and broke down the last defender. Kaiser and Ness ran to keep up with Isagi. However, they were just too far back, and he scores the first goal of this match. The crowd then roars for their young prodigy, and Isagi looks back to Itoshi Sai, nodding, as with this, the duo don't believe that they could lose it all while playing together. Germany would soon try their own attack, but it falls short thanks to the keeper of Japan, Gagamaru. Being used to how incredible Isagi's shots were, he quickly adapted to the Kaiser impact and stopped it, throwing the ball upfield to Isagi, who traps it and then drops it to the outside wing. Chigiri runs down the field and Isagi matches his speed through the middle. Ness was on his right side and planned to stop him, or at least slow Isagi down. This is when Isagi stopped running and now ran side by side with Ness. Chigiri quickly adapted to this, and instead of crossing the ball through the middle, he now headed towards the box and was looking for a pass. Looking up around the field and scanning it to the best of his ability, he would see Isagi and many more options. But since he would send the ball to someone else who could have off something, well, he'd have a better shot or pass option, giving it off to Kira, who would instantly send a one-touch pass to Isagi. Isagi traps the ball, as this was enough time though for Kaiser to catch up. Having two defenders on him wasn't the ideal situation, but he would have to make it work. His time in Spain wasn't for nothing at all, showing off the hyperspeed scissors that he had learned from Luna as he broke through Ness, and now he was prepared for a shot. Kaiser slid in his way, fouling Isagi and sending him flying on the ground. It wasn't within the penalty area, so a free kick would be given, and Isagi gets up slowly, wiping the dirt off his face and walking over to Itoshi Sai. He high-fives him, knowing that he would score, and as the prodigy would do just that, giving Japan a 2-0 lead while going into the half. Isagi notes that his side is in a little bit of pain, but he should be fine. Meanwhile, in the Germany locker room, Kaiser was having a mental breakdown. How could Isagi be so far ahead of him? What was he doing so differently? No, he needed to win, no matter what happened, no matter the cost at all. Coming out of the half, things began to be a lot more competitive and physical. Germany came out swinging and scoring their first comeback goal within the 60th minute. Now they were only one goal behind, and Kaiser would tell Isagi that his time is running out. However, our striker still had a few more tricks up his sleeve, noting that he just needed 5 minutes. That's just about how much time he needed. He sent the ball all the way back into the defense, telling his team that the timer begins now. Itoshi Sai, knowing what he meant, dropped into the defense and just played back-to-back with Aiku a little bit. These two worked well together incredibly and began to maneuver the ball around the half-field mark before Isagi noted that the 5-minute timer was up within his mind. But during that entire time, Kaiser's complete focus was on him, knowing that the ball would come back his way. Isagi challenged him, but he had also wondered why his brother had such a target on him. Running into the midfield, raising his hand, the ball would be sent to him. Ego then sits up in his chair, wondering how this clash would go. He watches as Isagi traps the ball and was now facing off with his brother, who also seemed to be in a pseudo-flow state. If Isagi lost here, surely it would go in Germany's favor and they would come back, scoring again. But if he scores, Japan will enter their golden age of football. So what will you do, Isagi? What will you do? Lead us into the prosperous nation that we are meant to be, or let us fall back into the shadows? All of it is on you. Isagi tells Kaiser that all of this is actually pretty fun, and he enjoys the thought of a brotherly rivalry, but he can't afford to waste this chance. Entering a perfected flow state to Kaiser's own pseudo-flow state, he begins ripping him apart and breaking him down with his dribbling. Noting that Kaiser is a pretty good defender, Isagi went all out here. Even when Ness tried to help him, it was useless, and Isagi makes it through Kaiser and Ness before they even knew it. Itoshi Sai then ran by his side, also in his destroyer flow state. These two then broke through the defense of Germany, and Isagi scored his arcane sniper shot to seal the match. Falling into an even greater despair once the match was over, Kaiser claims that one day he will truly crush Isagi. Japan, though, were now world champions and began to be awarded the trophy. Many wanted Isagi to raise it up, but instead, he went to his father, who was on the sidelines, and brought him onto the field. And he would grab his coach, Jinpachi Ego, as these two would be the ones who raised the trophy together with their team standing behind them. Isagi and Sai share a moment of true happiness, with each of them smiling, as you could see it in their face, while their brothers stood in the shadows in agony. And this is where our story finally concludes, as I hope you all have enjoyed it, as I try to push videos out like this as fast as I can, but I also have a lot of other projects in the works right now, and a lot of other things, so I hope you all do understand. If you enjoy my content and you want to see more of it, subscribe to the channel and like this video, as my name is Zero, and I'll catch you all on the next one.